This is Leadership in Action, and I'm Casey Cheshire. Join me as we delve deep into the passions, expertise, and experiences of Boston area innovators. Sponsored by the Boston chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organization. This is Leadership in Action. All right, here we are live, everyone. Welcome. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today. He is a serial entrepreneur, a thought leader, and a room energizer. I know this because I've been with him in the EO Boston chapter for over 10 years. Not me, him. He's been a member of the organization for such a long time, and every time he comes into the room, everyone cheers up. He's been involved in the virtual learning committee. He is also the fellow podcast host of EO 360, which I highly recommend. We're going to put in the show notes if you want to click on over to that podcast as well. Previous founder and chief executive Peach at Peach New Media, which was acquired by private equity firm AKKR, co-founder and CEO at Propfuel now, Dave Will. Welcome to the show.
You're so nice, brother. Like I'm like bouncing out of my chair ready to talk, and it has nothing to do with my Diet Mountain Dew right
Diet
here.
Mountain Dew.
Yeah, not really the health drink, but it's my treat. You know, it's the kind. This is the thing. This is my vice. I don't drink a lot. I don't smoke. My Diet Mountain Dew is my vice, and so every now and then, when I'm getting gas at the gas station, that's my vice.
Right? Why not? You gotta live a little, right?
Yeah, but here's the why not. The why not is because you start going off in tangents like this. The caffeine plus the ADD just like throws you off the charts. And all of a sudden, the whole podcast is about Dave's vice.
Well, you know what? That would be a different podcast. And if I didn't have these notes in front of me, I might just go with you on that journey to Mountain Dew Land. But
oh my God, can you imagine the two of us like just given free reign, just go anywhere you want with this? Okay, let's go into your notes.
No, yeah. Well, how we start this and how we start every show is by me asking you to smash a myth for me. What is a common misconception, a myth, bogus strategy around leadership or being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, dude. Well, first of all, I appreciate you letting me know about that in advance, because that's a tough question right off the bat. Right. In fact, when we were talking about it a couple days ago, I had an idea and I was like, yeah, I could go with this. But since then, I'm sitting there driving in the car and I was thinking, I think I heard somebody say something about like how they had that idea. Facebook is the perfect example. Everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I had that idea in the 60s." Like I had this idea of, I called it a yearbook. But everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I had that idea." They just happened to do it. Like doing it is the easy part. And I think that's a misconception. I don't think there's a lot of this is one of these things where all the entrepreneurs out there listening are going to be like, "Yeah, no kidding." Right. This is not an entrepreneur misconception. This is a misconception that people that aren't entrepreneurs have about what we do. And I think the misconception, to be very, very clear, is the misconception would be that ideas are the bulk of the work, right? Coming up with a good idea. If only I had a good idea. Everybody's got good ideas. Ideas are a dime a dozen. The really, really hard part is the execution. And sometimes the hard part is letting your idea evolve, right? Because we all have good ideas, but the best ideas are those that we kind of set free and we let the market shape with us and we allow ourselves to grow and input from people. And so the ideas that you start a business with oftentimes are not what it turns into down the road, unless you're Steve Jobs or something, which there's not a lot of those. Right. That's the misconception, I think, is the most entertaining is, oh, I had that idea.
Yeah, but it's interesting. You brought up this evolution of the idea too. And could you tell me, like, how do you balance the thought of being that driven? I mean, everyone listening, we're entrepreneurs, we're business leaders, Boston area and worldwide, and we have an idea, we're driven, we go for it. At what point, when do you give up some of the innovation around that? Or how do you balance your steadfast idea with allowing the market to correct you? When should you do either one of those?
It's an awesome question. And, when you have the idea, for me at least, I can only talk from my perspective. It's a classic EO thing.
Yeah, but you're Dave Will, so. you know.
So yeah,
So,
so I can only talk from my experiences with this, and I do have a fair amount of experience with ideas shifting. So like my first business, Peach New Media, evolved to the point where it was a learning management system, pretty sassy. And when I say sassy, for those not in software, SaaS, software as a service, we refer to it as being kind of sassy. And the
mm,
reason sassy and not SaaS is because we actually had 35% of our revenue came from services, whereas a typical like support services, implementation, so on. Whereas a
interesting.
typical SaaS company is really highly self-serve.
Right.
Um, so we were sassy, but it
That
wasn't
sounds better
like
than
that.
ish, right? I like that better than
Yeah,
ish.
SaaS-ish.
Sashish.
But it wasn't like that in the beginning. It was all, I was reselling web conferencing 14 years before selling this.
Was that the original
Yeah, yeah, it was just
reselling? Wow.
reselling. I had a good deal with a company called Placeware that ultimately became Microsoft Live Meeting, and so anyway, my point being is that sometimes you have a vision,
Hmm.
sometimes you just have an idea to make a couple bucks. Either way, you have to be open to this evolution of the product. Let the product have its own life. And for me, to answer your question, what is the like? How do you do that? I think it's a constant mindset of, is it working? Can I change it? What do I need to change? That kind of thing. And that's an everyday question, right?
Yeah.
But the real challenge there is balancing your actions associated with your thought. And so the thought process, and it's a thought process that you don't do in a silo. I have this conversation with my team like literally almost every day
Okay.
about the product, about feedback from clients, our position in the market. Uh, and it's not like an EOS sort of all day meeting sort of thing, but these are conversations that we have as a team all the time. But I can tell you with Propfuel, this is my current company,
Right.
Propfuel. We started this 4 years ago, and it took us 3 years, like to 3 years, to figure out who we were in the market, to find that product market fit. And even now that I believe we found it, we're still making adjustments, just not
Right.
as dramatic as the adjustments we were making 4 years ago. So we came out to the market with something, we put it out there. How did we know it wasn't working? Well, we were selling some. Like, that's the hard part. Like, you're selling a little, but it just wasn't meeting our expectations.
Right.
Over and over and over again, it wasn't meeting our expectations, and it was a lukewarm reception from the market, and the price was low. So it's
Mm,
like, if there's low value, so we had to pivot and change some things. And so the answer to your question is iterative process. I think, in my opinion, if you're going to make changes, and this is a very broad statement, but I think quarterly is not a bad time period for a young company with a fairly new product to revisit, where are we going, what's the market saying, how are they reacting. So if I could give you a very broad answer, that's that more or less our approach is pretty much quarterly in terms of visiting, but we had conversations about it every day.
got it. Everyday conversations. And I also picked up that you were gathering feedback from clients, looking at the market. You weren't just in a bubble of even your own team, yourself or your team, of just talking about the product. You were getting outside
Oh
input,
yeah, and it
not
wasn't just
isolating.
clients; it was also prospects. Like
Right.
the people we were
Yeah.
talking to, and so part of that process isn't changing the product; it's changing the market you're going after, right? So I remember, in the early days of PropFuel, we were an employee engagement platform, for lack of a better word. Now we've completely pivoted to a conversational engagement platform for member-based organizations. Like, in other words, we're going after associations that have thousands and dozens of thousands of members,
Okay.
and we're helping them get those members more involved in this conversational, very much like Drift. Like,
Okay.
David Cancel just spoke to EO recently, EO Boston. I just had him on the EO 360 podcast too. David Cancel is the founder of Drift.
Yep.
Drift is a conversational marketing bot. So we're doing that kind of stuff, but through email for associations. But the point being, like, early on, we were an employee engagement platform, totally different. totally different. And so we would talk to prospects and clients, and we'd get all kinds of feedback from them. And we got enough feedback over time to realize that the people we're engaging and the questions we're asking and the approach in which we're going about asking those questions isn't as valuable as it needs to be to build a really good business.
Yeah.
And so we've shifted and ultimately found the sweet spot.
It's interesting they call it product market fit. And you had shared that it's not necessarily changing the product. Sometimes it's
Right.
the product, sometimes
Duh.
it's the market. What,
I know. I didn't even think about the name of it.
right.
You're right. Product market fit. Duh. It's not just the product, but it's also the market. Right.
And I could imagine if you hadn't shifted the market, you might still be in the market trying to find this product and trying to squeeze almost like a round product into a square hole. When do you know to shift market versus just tweak the product?
Oh my God. Such a good question, dude. Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a really, really good question. But actually, I'm going to come back to that because I
Okay.
think there's a third element, which is your expertise, right? Your area of knowledge. And I don't
Yeah.
know what you call that. I'm kind of defaulting to expertise, but you have the product market expertise fit. And I just of course made that up, but so you got the product which has got to fit, and then you got the market that the product needs to fit into, but then you better know something about it and you better know the industry. And so we shifted to associations as our primary focus, and we're finding success there because we really know associations from my last company.
Right.
And so I'm sure there's other markets that our product would fit in, and there's other variations of the product, like client success. It'd be a great client success tool for businesses, and I'm sure there's lots of healthcare. We could have gone into healthcare. I
Yep.
don't know anything about healthcare,
Right.
and so therefore we didn't choose that path. So when do you focus on the market change versus the product change? I just don't know. I mean, my hunch tells me that it's part of that iterative process. What we did, let me just dissect this a little
Yeah.
bit with
Yeah.
you. I'm going to
Definitely.
think out loud here. What we did is we had this product, and we would try that in different verticals,
Okay.
right? So I remember going after small business owners. I remember going after HR. This is back when we were doing employee engagement stuff.
Right.
Small business owners, and we even sponsored one of the EO regional events when it was in Buffalo, Nerve in Buffalo,
Okay.
and then we went after HR professionals, and then we were for bigger companies, and then we went after coaches, trying to get coaches to come on board, and that was more or less with the same product. I think I came up with the answer now. So the idea is we have the product, and then
Yeah.
you try that product in a few different verticals. Yeah, it's not really working. So you shift the product, try the shift in either the same or slightly different verticals now with a different message and see if it works. So I think that's
Interesting.
probably
So it was like
that's how we
it was
use
you take
space.
the same product and you're shopping it at different verticals or markets, right?
Yeah,
Shopping at different markets,
the
and
slightly
then
different messages because the messaging is a big
right,
part of it too.
right, different messages, but the same product. But then if that's not working, you sort of fed that back into let's change the product a little bit, and then let's go try other markets or go back to
Yeah.
those markets.
Yeah. And the challenge with startups and the reason so many fail is you run out of money before you find that product market fit. It's not that there's not potential. And this is exactly the conversation when Guy Raz on How I Built This asks his guests at the end of every episode, was it luck or intelligence? Um,
Interesting.
Oftentimes it's luck, but luck, as we know, is manufactured with persistence. Tweet that one, huh? But no, I think luck is manufactured with persistence. The longer you're trying something, the longer you're in the arena. Great poem or speech by
Hmm.
Roosevelt, by the way, Man in
I
the
love that
Arena.
one.
It's just absolutely one of my all-time favorite speeches. But the longer you're in the arena, the more likely something good is going to happen.
Assuming you're testing it, assuming you're not stuck in your ways, or it's interesting,
Yeah,
right?
probably, right? Man, we're figuring out a lot today. We could
Yeah,
probably write a book about
I know,
just
right?
this conversation. This is where I wish some of the listeners could chime in, and I wish this was a bigger group conversation. But
Right.
yeah, this is cool stuff.
Amazing. Well, tell me, you did have a successful exit, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you,
Um,
brother.
what was that like? What was that like?
Uh, so
Any
it was
recommendations or tips for
yeah, it
the
was a
listeners?
14-year overnight success. It's I've heard other people make comments like that, and it always makes me laugh because it seems so easy on the outside, because what people hear and see is um, the finish line,
Hmm.
but what they don't hear and see, and all entrepreneurs listening to this know this, it's the for me, I'll give you very specifically the challenges in the early days, but it was getting fired from my job and making the decision not to take another job. It was my wife supporting that decision and saying, you know what, do what makes you feel good,
Hmm.
and we'll figure the rest out. My wife, just she's just amazing. I mean, can you imagine if you were not working, staying at home with the kids, your wife gets laid off from her job, and you're just turn around and be like, yeah, whatever, do what you want, honey, we'll be fine. I'd
Mm,
be like, are you kidding me? Go get another job, make it snappy,
right. Let's
bring
go.
home the bacon.
And
But
until then,
anyway,
deliver pizzas.
yeah. So I the then credit card debt.
Yeah.
The God, that was stressful, seeing $80,000 in credit card debt.
Hmm.
Trying to get that next win, trying to get the next piece of business. And then, of course, the product market fit, and trying to figure out, is this actually going anywhere? Or should I get a real job? People don't see that. And they don't see
Yeah.
when you get hacked by Vietnamese hackers, and all of a sudden you're wondering, after 9 years in business, is this it? Are we done? Is everything I've worked for 9 years getting thrown away? And they don't see the line of credit that's attached to your mortgage. They don't
Yeah. That is
see
a scary part for sure.
the people you got to fire and make those decisions. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. The best job I've ever had, but it's certainly, I equate it to running a marathon. Right, I enjoy running,
Yeah.
and um, I've had this conversation with my friends. The marathon is the result, right? It's not the it may be the pinnacle, but it's not where the joy comes from. It's not where the work goes. It's not the hardest part of marathon training, is not the marathon. It's waking up every day at 5 or 4:45 in the
Yeah.
morning. It's forcing yourself out the door when you don't feel like going. It's
Right.
getting out on a Sunday and spending 3 hours on the road in the heat, depending on the day. That's the beauty and the glory uh, of marathon running. And I think the same is true with business. So what was it like to sell the business? It was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. The process, it was stressful and awesome, especially the finish line. Going through that
Mhm.
finish line after 26 miles is awesome, of course. So that's what it was like. It was a lot of hard work over 14 years. Um, by the way, no harder work than any other entrepreneur. It's not like people sell their business because they've worked harder. It just happens that there's a really good fit at some point for what they're creating.
Right.
But here's another thing. I'm rambling on, but I want to say
No,
this.
this is good.
Something that's really, really cool about selling a business is, for the first time in the life of your business, well, for me, I guess, I got to go back to my experience. For the first time in the 14 years of building Peach New Media, somebody put a dollar amount in the value we had created.
Hmm.
Right. So it's so cool. Like, for a long time, you're like, oh, look at all my employees, and we're putting food on the table and giving them vacations and helping their kids go to college. And we're actually creating marriages. 3 marriages came out of that company, by the
No
way.
kidding.
Yeah, employees
Practically a
getting married
dating
to
app at
each
that point.
so you're seeing all this cool stuff, and you're seeing the
Yeah.
clients, and they're paying money, and clients are happy. Most of them are happy. But the actual dollar, the price tag of the acquisition, is like, look what you created. And this is we're quantifying your value creation. And
Right.
I thought that was really, really cool.
Because you
I
never
could go
really
into a
know,
lot of,
right? You never really know. you may have high esteem of what you've done or low, and you
Yeah.
don't. It's but to have someone give you that, black and white number on a screen, or
Yeah.
you know.
One of the coolest things, one of the cooler moments, and I was coached to, you always decline the first offer. I don't want to tell other people that. I got to be very, very careful. This is my experience. And I was coached to decline the first offer. And naturally, so I was in San Francisco in the airport. My wife was actually flying in. I was flying in from Seattle. She was flying in from Boston. And we were going to meet there for a couple days just to enjoy San Francisco before I had a conference in San Francisco, and she was going to fly home.
Mhm.
And it was the day I was expecting a call from AKKR, and they called on cue, and I was in the airport waiting for her in the baggage claim, noisy, and I'm trying to find a corner. And I remember them saying, "Well, Dave, we're really pleased to be at this point where we're going to make you an offer. We have a letter prepared. It's for X dollars. How does it sound to you?"
Hmm.
And I already had the line prepared.
Wow.
Like, it was already like, I don't even think I let him get it out before I said, by the way, before I even said it, he said the numbers, and I was like, "Oh my God."
Right. So it
Like,
was still a good no. It
oh
was
my
like
God.
it was a
Like,
lot of moolah, but
I
you
can't
knew.
believe,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like, I couldn't believe a kid that thought maybe being middle management and making $100,000 one day in his lifetime, to hear a number like this was just amazing. And in the line that came out of my mind was, I mean, out of my mouth was I'm flattered and I really appreciate it. But unfortunately, if we're going to sell this business, that's not going to work for my wife or me.
Wow.
And like, so in other words, this is my business. My wife is a part of my life in the
Mhm.
business. We cannot sell it unless it's absolutely hands down lifelong money. And so that began the negotiations, which ultimately landed in a couple more $1 million, which was
Was that
valuable.
hard to do? Was that hard to say that first no?
It was a little scary, but at the same time, I know they're not going to walk away with
You were coached and
one counter. Yeah, so
yeah,
it's a little bit like, am I doing the right thing? But
right.
yeah, not really. It was a really the whole thing though was a circus from the point at which you get the letter of intent, which, by the way, the letter of intent, um, I want to say the number is something like 30% of deals that get, and I may be off, but it's a low number. The number of deals that get a letter of intent that do not go through to close,
Mm.
it's very low, or very high. Sorry, the number that do not go through is very high. Um, and so we went through this process. It was in October, supposed to close by Thanksgiving. I remember 2 weeks or a week before Thanksgiving, I told my employees, because I figured, fairly transparent company, I want them to know what's going to happen in a week or two. Of course, day before it was supposed to close, they call and say, "Hey, we want to see one more month numbers." I'm like, oh my God, I just told everybody. And then the next
Right.
month comes,
Don't take a vacay, everyone.
and they're
We
like,
need that.
"Actually, we
Yeah.
want to see the end of year numbers." Are
Oh,
you kidding me?
geez.
So now at this point, I told my employees November, early mid-November.
Yeah.
And now they want to go through the end of December. It's going to take us a week to get our numbers together. So now it's at least mid-January
Yeah.
before we're going to close. Then January comes along. We killed our numbers, like smashed them. It was
Oh.
awesome. And I couldn't wait to go to them. And I got on the phone and I showed them numbers, and almost like a big F you, look at this. You should have closed earlier. This would have been
Yeah.
all yours. And it was like silence. Like, "Hey, this thing on?"
Is this
Like,
yeah.
Hey, can you guys hear me? Am I muted?" I So they, very, very non-discreet answer. And like a day later, or maybe it was like 3 days later, I'm going out of my mind. What is going on here? And they called back and basically said, "Look, we've had uh, some turnover at this company we're going to bolt you on to. We need to put this on hold for a few months." So this is January, by the way.
Damn.
So it's
Yeah.
like, it's a roller coaster. And like in
Right.
my head, I've already picked out the boat I'm going to get. And
Yeah. You've
like
already
in my
named it.
head, it's already sold, right? The thought
Right.
of going back to the scramble is now, it would be so hard, not to mention all my employees that already
Yeah.
know, and they're
Yeah.
still wondering, am I going to have a job? Despite what I tell them, by the way. So
Right.
moral of the story, I would not have told them.
Got it.
I will not do that next time. I will not tell my employees until the deal is done. All right. So having said that, this might be valuable to people listening. so I went back to him. I was like, okay, I understand. This was all coached by my attorney. Um, I went back to him and said, okay, I understand things happen, but I want you to know that I'm back out in the market. There was they knew there was another private equity firm interested. I was like, I understand, but you can't expect me to sit back and wait.
Right.
If you want, pay my legal fees, which at this point was like 100 grand, pay my
Jeez.
legal fees and I'll give you another month. Or I'm I'm a free agent now. Like, I get it, no hard feelings, but I'm going to go back to this other firm and see if they're still interested. And he said, okay, hang on, let me get back to you. Like an hour later, he calls back and says, I think we figured it out. We're still good. Let's close on Friday. so,
Are
so
you
that was it. We
serious?
ended up closing February 13, 2015. That was a
Wow.
really cool Valentine's Day.
Man. Man. Oh,
It was a roller coaster. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Well, my next question for you is, who are you? Who is this guy Dave that I've known in EO, and we've swapped many a story and a
Oh,
beer.
I love you, Casey.
Can you
Chasey.
take me
Chase
back in time?
Chevy.
Cheese,
What's Chevy?
Casey Cheese.
Who am I? Thanks. It's an interesting question. Well,
Like little Dave, where'd you grow up? What was it like? Did you know you
you
were
know
going to
what?
be
So let me tell you
building
who I am right
businesses?
now. And
Yeah.
I have a handful of identities, right?
Okay.
I'm a, I almost said a runner, but I would consider myself more of what I like to think of as an endurance athlete.
Cool.
And I just was scuba diving with the Boy Scouts,
Oh, nice.
and
What kind of watch is that?
I killed my Garmin, my last Garmin watch.
Okay.
Apparently it was too old to get to 5 ATM as they said it would. So I asked my kids, I was like, guys, do I get an Apple Watch or do I get another Garmin? They looked at me like I was nuts. Like, Dad, you get a Garmin. So
Duh.
anyway, I just bought this, and I'm showing
Hey,
you this for those
high five.
people
Which
that
one did you get?
it's the Phoenix 6 solar
Oh, I got a
thing.
Phoenix 6 too. Yeah.
Oh, I love
This
it.
show
I
brought to you
love it.
by Diet Mountain Dew and Garmin,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so that's who I am. That's one way I like to identify myself. And then the other way, I'm going to give you three words.
Yeah.
One is adventure athlete. The second one is identify myself as an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
because I take so much pride in what we do, and the point that
Yeah.
we're trying to create something out of nothing. That's a huge part of my identity. And the third part is, as many of us are, I'm a dad and I'm a lover, man. I really really enjoy um, being a family man. And to be honest, I dropped the other two if necessary for that one. I
Yeah.
don't want to. I don't want to have to make that choice, but I would if I had to. That's the priority. In terms of background, the most interesting thing about my background, I think, uh, and I had a pretty Leave It to Beaver background, not a lot of adversity. I struggled to answer that college essay, like talk about one major adversity in your life.
Mm,
And I don't wish I had adversity.
right.
I'm very grateful to have had a good upbringing. We were not well off. We're lower middle class, I
Sure.
think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never had a need for anything. I had loving parents. Um, and I was raised by a teacher and an engineer that were always home, and always loved me no matter what. And so that's what I mean by Leave It to Beaver. Really, really nice upbringing.
Yeah. Sounds good, man. Sign me up. Sounds good.
Yeah, right. I know.
Yeah.
And now here's the interesting part about that. We were raised, and I think I can speak for you too. You're Gen X, right?
I don't even know which one I am, but
Really?
I'm old
What year
enough
were
to
you
have
born?
not have had 80. So no, we didn't have the
That
internet.
proves you're just a kid, man. Oh my God, you look so much
I know I've
older.
never used punch cards on computer science. It's true.
You
Dates
didn't
me a little
catch my
bit.
little jab there, huh? You don't look that old. You look
Thank
young.
you.
You look like you were born in 80. Yeah, no
Thank you.
punch cards. I didn't use punch cards either, man. So, but all right. So I'll tell you about me again. I'm Gen X, right?
Okay.
So
So what
it's
does that mean? How old are you?
well, so I'm 50.
Okay.
I was born in 70. My This is the significance that though of that is my parents were in this generation that isn't the boomers and it's not
Mm,
the millennials. There's this one everybody's heard of also called Gen X. There's a movie about us, and Reality Bites. And If you ever want to understand Gen X, just watch that movie, by the way. And
Okay.
then, but nobody. Oh, and there's also the Greatest Generation. Remember them? Our grandparents, the Stoics, and the serve the country.
Yeah.
That kind of group. The one nobody remembers is the Silent Generation. That was
Hmm.
my parents. My parents are, I don't know the years, but my dad's 83 right now. He's part of the Silent Generation. Sadly, my mother passed away when I just graduated college. That was adversity. I'll tell you that. That sucks. But, uh, uh, but so my dad's 83. My mother would be 82 right now. They are the Silent Generation. Here's the thing about the Silent Generation is they don't want to rock the boat. They're like, look, get good grades, go to college, get a job, go to graduate school because you can and you're
Sure.
smart enough and you can
Sure.
do this. Go to graduate school, get a good job, find a person and marry them, and become middle manager, make six figures, be happy, retire, and die.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the plan all laid out. And from there, you can make adjustments if you'd like. But family is number one. Make six figures. If you do your career well, if you do well, if you do better than us, you'll make six figures. And I remember my dad telling me once, Dave, you'd be a great project manager. I'm like, oh, even as a kid, I was like, God, that sucks. But I aspired to be an engineer and project manager. Needless to say, I tried to do that this is
Yeah.
who I am, answering a question. I tried to do that for many, many years. I went to college, hardly. I graduated, got a job, went to graduate school, met a girl. I got a good job, got married. Holy moly. Had kids, but then everything broke.
Mm.
I was trying to fit into all these jobs and I was doing okay. And I was chasing the money. At this point, I was getting six figures, but then I got fired. And that's what broke. That's what broke everything. And that's what jarred me out of this silent generation
Right.
perspective. That's what woke me up to realizing that I don't have to stay on the path anymore.
Mm.
So that's who I am, dude.
What is that? Is that the thing that inspired you to launch your first company?
Oh yeah, I got fired. I got a story about that. You want to hear
Would
that
you?
one?
Would you? Looking back, would you? I've
Yeah.
been fired. It seems like a kind of an entrepreneurial thing. Is that?
Oh, you're not an adult until you've been fired a couple times, or at least once. I
You've
think
heard it here, right?
you're not experienced unless you've been fired. What would you do when you got fired? Did you just get another job, or was
Yeah.
that the change for you? You
Hmm.
did, yeah.
Yeah. It took me a couple bumps to realize there was something else there, and I was a better entrepreneur than maybe a worker or something
Yeah.
like
It's
that.
hard to put myself back into what made me oh, you know what it was? I got it. So I was fired one morning. It was like 10:30 in the morning. I'm on the ferry. Actually, I'm looking, you have a background. It wasn't too far from the background
Over here somewhere.
behind you. And I was on Pier 4. Is that where the ferries are? Pier 4, right by Rose Wharf in Boston.
Mm, maybe.
Anyway,
Not
I'm
sure.
Rose
Yeah.
Wharf and waiting for the ferry to take me down to the South Shore. 10:30 in the morning. I had my little Nokia phone, like the one in the Matrix,
Yep.
and I call my wife, briefcase in hand. And I remember hearing her pick up the phone, and I heard Zach, who's now uh, heading into his junior year of college this year, and I heard him in her arms cooing,
Mm.
and instantly broke into tears. Uh, oh my God, I couldn't get it out that I had lost my job. Anyway, she was just so compassionate. And I remember going home and, being numb and going out to trim the hedges. Now it's like noon. And I don't know what to do with myself. So I'm just going to go trim the hedges. And I freaking sliced the tip of my finger almost all the way
Oh
off.
man,
I was
it's
just
like
so
your
out of
your
it.
mind's elsewhere, right?
And
Yeah.
we're new to this area, yeah. And so I'm like, I go in and I'm holding my hand. I'm like, hon, can you bring me to the hospital? I
Oh
just cut my
God,
finger.
man.
And so she brings me to, like, we're new to this area. And I remember seeing a sign for a hospital down the road. And so I'm like, look, there's Pembroke Hospital near us in Marshfield, and it's just bring me over there. And we pull into Pembroke Hospital, and there's a sign emergency. And we go up to emergency, and that she lets me on. I get out, and I go to the woman at the front desk, and I'm like, hey, she said, can I help you? I said, yeah, and it's a quiet hospital, and I'm like, I just cut my finger. Where should I go? She's like, wow, you should go to a medical hospital. I was like, well, where am I? And she's like, oh, you're at Pembroke Psychiatric Hospital. I'm like, oh, I'll be back. So
Right?
that's my
Yeah.
story
Let me
about.
get my
Oh,
finger fixed, and I'll come back.
so this is the moment where I decided, I'm moving on, and I'm going to start a business. I got another job offer. It's hard to remember the time period. I want to say like a couple weeks later, I had another job offer.
Yeah.
It was a lateral move, similar stuff, and I remember being so grateful to have a job offer, like so grateful. But
Mhm.
at the same time, when I thought about working there, I just had a dark pit in my gut.
Yeah.
Was not excited about it. And at the same time, a friend of mine had come to me with another idea, and that's so I went to my wife. I said, look, we're at a crossroads here, and I don't know what to do. And she said, do what makes you feel good. And so we did.
Wow. Shout out to her. Props,
No kidding,
because
man.
to
She's
have a job,
amazing.
steady job offer on the table. That's the trap, right? Even we talked product market fit. They, you had some sales, and that was the trap. I could just stay here because I have some
It's a
sales,
trap. I know.
or yeah, here's another job.
It's the sirens on the rock, right? Off the bow. Don't
Yeah.
go, don't go to the sirens.
Hey, come hang out. We've got cold beer.
Yeah.
Oh,
Is that a mermaid?
yeah.
You're pretty.
Wow, that manatee is cute. Right. And so, but wow, kudos. It was it harder or easier that there was another job offer? Harder, right? To know that there
I
was
I guess so. I don't know.
it wasn't like it was back against the wall. I have to start a company. It's like I
Yeah.
want to do this.
I think it was helpful for my ego,
Hmm.
because the ego gets bruised when you get fired. You know that.
Oh yeah.
And it's like you don't need me out of all these people. Like I'm the one you don't need right now.
It's rejection.
Yeah. And talk about value creation. I'm not creating that amount of money in value. That's what
Hmm.
it's saying.
Hmm.
Like that sucks. And hence what feels so good, on the contrary of getting acquired, is somebody says, oh, this is the value you created. It's like it's just the absolute um, opposites. So I don't know. Getting the job offer was um, nice little ego boost, but yeah, I guess I don't remember. I think it probably made it a much more difficult decision.
Did you have like a point in time where you had to, you know, show some kind of this is working? Otherwise, was there ever any doubt, like maybe I should go back and get that job,
Oh
or
my
any
God,
regret?
totally, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like I remember 8 or 9 years into it, wondering if I should go get a real job someday.
Right.
No, at that point, that's not completely true. It's probably 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
I mean, I was making money. Not
But
probably not.
even that first year was.
Oh, I made 40 grand in the first year. And just to be completely transparent, I think at this point how old was I? 30. So I was 30, and I was making 125 working in this consulting industry, systems integration stuff. And so I got fired 125. I think the offer I had was 115. If I remember correctly, it was a little lower. And then, so the year one of the business, I made 40 grand.
Hmm.
And year two was like 80 grand.
Was that profit or just revenue? Like
Kind
just
of. It was more.
ish.
There's really not much of a difference when it's one man shop, and you have
True.
very
Yeah. Yeah.
minimal expenses. So yeah, it was
Right.
really like a one man show I was doing, and eventually just evolved over time. That's partly why it took. I mean, I hear people say, "Oh, you're in accelerator. You should hit $1 million within the next 3 years." It took me, I want to say 7 years to hit $1 million
Hmm.
in revenue. And then the interesting thing is it took me another 7 years to hit 5 million. And um, so it's like it definitely, things as you scale, things get a lot easier.
Get easier. They get harder too.
Yeah, I guess so in
Do
some
they?
ways.
Interesting.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Things change, right?
They change. Yeah. Yeah. Even to your original point of the idea, you can have an idea, but it's one thing to then, execute that yourself. And then how do you add somebody else to the mix and somebody else? And then,
Oh yeah, hiring's
yeah.
hard. Hiring's
Yeah.
really hard, and I find management to be hard too. I
Same.
actually
Yeah.
learned a lot from I remember sitting on an airplane with my friend Amelia, who was an employee, and I was traveling with her, and she was a woman that I hired fairly fresh out of school. I think I hired her when she was 24 or something like that, a couple years out, and she really grew working at my company, and to the point where I want to say 7 or 8 years later, I'm on an airplane with her traveling back from somewhere, and she was coaching me like, dude, you've got to talk to people more. Like they
Mm,
look up to you and blah blah blah, and you got to talk to them, you got to listen to them. And so she was coaching me on how to be a better leader in the company, and it was hard to hear but also enlightening at how sucky I am as a manager. um, and yeah, managing is really, really hard.
hmm.
But you're right. You go from this point where you're kind of running the business, doing a lot on your own or with a small team, and then all of a sudden you start to hire people, and you hear things like questions about benefits in the 401k, and questions about, feeling whether they're growing personally and professionally. It's like stuff you're not thinking about until you
Right.
actually have employees.
Yeah. There's so many things, that are behind the scenes that people even take for granted. I remember, even when you first start saying, "Oh, we need to offer health care." how, how
I
do
know. That's
how do
when
we
you're a
do
real
that? You don't
company,
have
right?
any? Does your parents or your spouse have it? Like, and yeah, there's things to figure out.
That's when you know you're a real company, is when you're offering healthcare.
Benefits. Yeah.
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 Well, I'd love to kind of pivot a little bit and ask you about this topic that tends to occur to a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of leaders. The idea, you've heard that quote, it's lonely at the top, and I'd love to hear your take on it. Is it? And how have you found ways to, find community and find ways of connecting with people even as your company grew?
Yeah, well, first of all, I giggle a little when you say at the top, because I certainly don't feel like I'm at the top. You know, who's at the top is David Cancel, man. Drift, that guy is awesome.
He's amazing.
He's fresh. He's top of mind for me right now. But I was telling him when I was interviewing him in the podcast, I was like, I gotta say, I'm a little starstruck right now. Like, you're amazing. He's 49, so we're similar ages, and I'm like, dude, like I'm just so amazed at the thing, his ability to create a high value business
Yeah.
and turn it over is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I don't, number one, I don't really feel like I'm at the top, but I think what you mean by that is at
Mm,
the top of the ranks in your company, right? So you're the leader in your company. And is it lonely? I guess the lonely part is if you're doing it, by my definition of being right, it's I was a little too much of a friend to my employees. And I think if you're doing it right, you're not really everybody's friend. You're the leader. And to that sense, there's some would argue that it's okay to show some weakness and it's okay to show vulnerability, but at the same time, you're also a beacon of, and you got to be a beacon of positivity and encouragement and enthusiasm. And so, yeah, I know what you mean. And that's, to me, that's the value in EO. And
mm,
that's what I'm just shocked EO is not more popular. I mean, we got 15,000 members around the world.
right.
Every major city has this great chapter.
100
Um,
plus in Boston, right? So,
yeah, but again, only 100.
yeah, and
Like
there's
that's
thousands
what
of companies,
blows my
right?
mind. Like,
Yeah.
how is it that we're such a small collection of people? But anyway, I love the global community of entrepreneurs. I love, and I love sharing stories with each other, and realizing that no matter what vertical you're in, what kind of business, how big it is, all the way up to like PepsiCo versus one of our businesses, like they're dealing with the same issues there as we deal with in our, you know, 5, 10, 30, $50 million businesses.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the camaraderie in EO that I thrive from the most. And I tried a bunch of mastermind groups And every now and then I go to some others, but EO has been the consistent thing for me for the past 10, 11, 12 years.
Really like a consistent. A lot of things change, but that the consistency
Casey,
is there.
here's the one thing I think is really cool about EO. Anywhere you go in the world, you can reach out to the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And like you go to Barcelona, you don't know anybody. You reach out to the chapter, say, "Hey, I'm in town. Anybody want to get a drink?"
Yeah.
Or I'm in town. Anybody recommend a good restaurant? I'm in town. Anybody recommend a good place to stay? I'll bet more likely than not, you'll find that you're staying in somebody's guest room in their house in Barcelona. It's just the network of people uh, in around the world in EO is just incredible.
And they're taking you to dinner at some place you never would have found, even if you had the address, because it's behind this thing and around this parking garage. But it's the local hotspot gem. It's the place
Yeah.
that that the locals go to, and you're having a real authentic meal.
In some
Yeah.
scenarios, you walk away with a really strong business connection too.
Right.
Not just a cultural and a friend, but now you've got another perspective of where to take your business to.
Right. Um, one final question for you. It's a hypothetical question, perhaps. I may or may not have a time machine here in Nashua, New Hampshire, with me. It's in the backyard, covered in a tarp. So let's say
Is that a
COVID.
lawnmower? Is that
It may
is that
be,
a
but
time machine
you
or a
come
lawnmower?
over. We'll get some beer, and
Oh, I
you get
like
to
it.
use this time machine, right? And it takes you back in time to a particular time. It takes you back in time to the moment you started that company, that first company, and you get to meet yourself, right? You get to meet Dave then. What would you tell yourself? You got a couple minutes to say hi, and you get to talk to yourself. It won't mess up the time, the quantum universe, so you can tell yourself anything you'd like. What kind of things would you tell yourself?
Oh my God, Casey, it actually chokes me up a little bit because I'm actually really internalizing that question and
Yeah.
visualizing seeing myself 21 years ago. What chokes me up is how fast that 21 years went. That's the part that chokes me up, and the
Yeah.
fact that I had one kid. Actually, even then, I didn't have any kids. So about 20 years ago. Anyway, the point being, like, to see my kids now, the business, all the experience we had. I guess just going back there, I'd give myself a hug and I'd tell me I'm proud of me. And I can see myself at 30 looking back saying, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Like, but I'd give myself a big hug and I'd say, "I'm proud of you. You're doing fine.
Yeah.
Keep keep uh, uh what the don't keep the course.
Yeah.
Stay the course. That's what I'd say. Stay the course. I'm proud of you. You're doing fine." If I could go back 30 years, I would tell myself, to a point when I'm 20 years old,
Okay.
it's a different thing. I would tell myself, "You're fucking up." Like, "You little fucker. You better, number one, stop being a chameleon. You can't
Mm,
be all things to all people. Don't try to trick people into telling you, or don't try to trick people into thinking that you're something you're not. Figure out what you are and embrace it. Don't try to be a different thing." I was told once when I was working for SAP, I was 20, I want to say 26. I was told once to walk faster and smile less if you want to make it up the corporate ladder here at SAP. Walk faster and smile less because perception is reality. And I took it to heart, and I really thought that was a brilliant feedback because you don't have to be smart to do that.
smile less. I get to walk
Yeah,
fast.
well, it's perception. I want people need to see you're serious, you're working, your business,
Serious, not
right?
the
Look, can you
jokester
see
all the
this? Look
time.
over my shoulder. Can you read
Yeah.
that?
Walk slow,
I'm not.
smile more.
So I
Yeah.
got this sign this year for Father's Day. This past year, my son made me that sign that says "Walk slow, smile more." And here we are, almost 30 years, 25
Oh.
years later, and it's become such a mantra in my life to walk slow and smile more. So in my 20s, I was all about trying to be the right fit for these corporations that want you to walk fast and smile less. And it took me until I was 30, 35 years old to learn that it's okay to be who you are. It's okay to be silly. It's okay to be immature. It's okay to, do you. Just do what you are. And if some people don't like it, it's okay. You don't need to do business with them. But if you're you, you're going to thrive.
Yeah.
That's what I would tell myself 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's amazing. Dave, where can people get in touch with you? Where do you want them to reach out? What social platforms? How do you want them to find you?
Well, my email is just the easiest way. It's
Okay.
dave@propfuel.com. That's the best way to reach me. Or reach me in EO. Come to EO, man.
Yeah.
We got a great network. We're always in touch with each other on WhatsApp. So EO is such a great organization. If you're listening to this,
eoboston.org, right?
yeah, eoboston.org. If you're not a part of EO and you're listening to this, man, and you're an entrepreneur or you're a budding entrepreneur, look into it. It's such a great organization.
Totally agree. And how about your podcast? Give a shout out to
where do we find
your
Entrepreneurs
podcast?
Organization 360, EO 360, and all the podcast players got hundreds of episodes. Well, no, that's not true. 150 or so episodes. And, some really, really cool episodes. I mentioned Drift, David Cancel, the founder of Drift. We got a guy that started California Closets. We got the guy that was eaten by a shark. And it came through. We got
and you have the best guests on that show.
Other than cool
this show has way better guests than all of the guests you've ever interviewed.
Oh man,
what are you gonna say about that, Dave? Will?
I don't know. Casey, you're a great interviewer, man. I really enjoy this conversation. Maybe because it's all talking about me. But thank you. It's so nice to reflect the way your questions are so good in drawing stuff out. I hope there's some value in it. I hope it was interesting for people.
Well, I know I have like 2 pages of notes over here, so I learned something. So
yeah, please.
If somebody else did, great. Otherwise, I'm good. But yeah, thank you again, man, for coming on here. I know you're a busy guy, and it's great to just be a participant in that reflection with you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
For those listening, this has been the first and soon to be more many exciting episodes of Leadership in Action. We will see you all next time. Leadership in Action is sponsored by the Boston chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organization. As the world's only peer-to-peer network exclusively for entrepreneurs, EO helps transform the lives of those who transform the world.